Good evening, everyone, and welcome. After a long hiatus, it's wonderful to see so many of you coming to study Torah, particularly the Tanya. We are holding towards the end of chapter 38. Just a little bit, a brief introduction to what we studied so far, and then a summary of what we will be covering for the remainder of the chapter. In chapter 35 until 38, within the start of 38, the rabbi speaks about the idea of serving God in action. God desired to have a dwelling place, a house, a palace here in the universe, which is a physical, materialistic place. And he's asking us to build this palace through action. In the sense of action includes also speech. In other words, God says, I want you to celebrate Shabbat, light Shabbat candles, put on tefillin, study Torah with your mouth, say Shema morning and evening with your mouth, pray to God. There are seasonal mitzvot. There are mitzvot that are applicable in certain times or certain places in the Holy Land. We have mitzvot of tithing and Shemitah, sabbatical, the first 3 years of the tree. All kinds of mitzvot apply in certain places. Some apply to certain people, and some apply to certain times. On Sukkot, we go to build a sukkah. On Rosh Hashanah, we blow the shofar. This is a mitzvah. That's how we build a palace to God. In other words, if I want to serve God and serve the purpose for which I was created, I must obey God in action. What if I had all the intention to serve God, but I did not actually perform the act? Then it has no value. It's not that I did a little bit. I didn't do. If I tell my son, if I tell my child or my employee, I need you to go to the bank or I need you to go shopping and buy bread, and he's thinking about it, he didn't do anything. He's not going to get paid for thinking about going shopping. Either they went or they didn't. This is until chapter 38. Now comes the Rebbe and tells us that intention, we're going to use the Kabbalistic or the Hebrew word, but the Kabbalistic interpretation will be explained, which we call Kavanah. Kavanah, like Carvana, but no R. Kavanah. Kavanah in Hebrew is intention. Putting my mind and focusing on what I'm doing and why am I doing it. As we will discover, there are different levels of kavanahs. We will discuss, where I'm discussing is the most basic idea of kavanah, which is I am mindful of what I'm doing. I'm doing something for the purpose of serving God because God had asked me. So when I pray to God, I think about what I say. When I say Shema, I pay attention to the words, not just uttering the words. Yes.
The quote, even if you don't have the intention, you say the word.
Of course. Again, from the two, we assume, we'll find out soon, we assume that action versus kavanah, action supersedes. Because without action, you don't have anything. Without kavanah, you still, if you have action, you still have something. Says the Rebbe, however, God himself had ordered us to have kavanah when we perform the mitzvah. In other words, God said, I want you to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. God said, I want you to bless the Beka Bracha and the Lulav and Sukkot, to eat in the Sukkah. You can do it with action, but you can do it also with kavanah, and that will be a far greater mitzvah. The way to explain, as we will go into details, the rabbi is going to take a very lengthy discussion But before I give you an introduction to the discussion that we're going to study today, just a little bit, a point that I saw a commentator, a rabbi who is still alive, explains. He says that God wanted us to build him a palace, but he also wanted to have light in the palace. Imagine you build a house, you follow the instructions, but you don't put lights. It's dark. It's not pleasant. You will get paid for what you have done because you followed the instructions. But what if in addition you also made sure there is light in every room and in the entrance, then the house is lit. It makes the whole house, the entire project, feel and expressed itself in a much greater level. That's what Kavanah is about. The rabbi is going to explain to us by using the number 4. And that idea of number 4 will come up in the next few chapters over and over and over. How many number 4 do you know in Judaism? Let's not bring Passover. We're not going to talk about the 4 sons and 4 questions. I'm asking you 4 in spirituality in Kabbalah. Anyone?
4.
Huh?
Rabbi moms.
4 mothers, okay. Anybody else? Okay, so let's start. There are 4 universes. Atzilut, emanation, Bria, creation, Yetzira, and Asiya. The rabbi is going to concentrate on the 2, Bria and Yetzira. And next week as well, and then to the first and the last later on. How many ways the Torah is interpreted? Anybody? Huh? 4. Pardes, orchard, pardes in Hebrew. Pshat, the simple one. Remez, hinting, drash, analytic, and sod, the secret, the Kabbalah. The Torah, every word of the Torah can be interpreted in 4 different levels. We will see how it all connects. The Rebbe is going to connect all of that. The next one, how many foundations God used to create the universe? We studied in chapter 1. If you remember, there are 4 foundations. And they are fire, air, water, and earth, right? There are 4. Gas, liquid, there are other names to those 4. Elements, 4 elements, thank you. How many categories in the creation of the universe? 4. Inanimate, plants, animals, and men. There are 4. And finally, the soul of the human in the human being is divided into 4. The 5th one is with God, Yechida. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya. David, I guess he's a very shy student. I'm glad you're sitting next to him. So there are 4 components to the soul that are part of the human. There are 4 categories of creation. There are 4 universes. There are 4 elements God used to create the universe. And there are 4 worlds. They all come from God's name, which is divided into 4 letters. Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. I'm not allowed to pronounce it, to spell it out one after the other, because that's carrying God's name in vain. So I make the end in the middle. But for God's name is made out of 4 letters. Yud, and after that comes a Hey, after Vav, after Hey. And they all correspond to the 10 attributes. The 10 attributes are divided into 4 categories. Yud corresponds to Chokhmah, the start, and that includes all the intelligence. Vav, Yud is Chokhmah. Hey corresponds to Bina and Dat, intelligent. Vav is number 6. It represents the 6 attributes of emotions. And the last Hey is Malchut, the number 10 that takes everything and uses it, bring it into the world of action. We're not dealing with this now. I'm just in general sharing with you that God's name is made out of 4 letters, and they all correspond to those 4 categories that I share. I am sure you'll be able to pass a test about those 4 in the categories. Why is it important? The rabbi is going to be very long, but what the rabbi, I have studied it over and over today and before. It's so amazing how the rabbi takes the 4 categories of human versus inanimate, the creation of the universe. God created minerals and still objects, plants, animals, and human, and divide them into 2. 2 that are upper, men and animals. Why are they in the upper echelon? Because they have emotions. Remember the key word, emotions. They can express how they feel. The plants and the inanimate also feel. They sense everything that goes on. When Mashiach will arrive, the rocks will scream, and to people who use the rocks to step on, to go and commit a sin, and say, who gave you permission to step on me when you did not serve God? But they don't have emotions. They do not feel hurt, or they don't express themselves. In fact, we are forbidden from ripping apart a part of an animal for consumption. Ever min hachai is one of the 7 laws of Noah that's forbidden also. Why? Because animals, they sense, they feel. When they get hurt, they get hurt. If I kick an animal, they get hurt. Plants don't have that. That's why if I see a tree bearing fruit, a fig tree, I can take apart a fruit. If I need a branch to use it as a quill or to use it to scratch my back, I can chop it off, even though the tree is alive. I don't have to kill the tree before I benefit from it. Animals, even for the non-Jewish world that don't need to slaughter and they don't have restriction about the type of animals, they are forbidden from benefiting unless the animal is dead. Why? So it shouldn't suffer. So you have 2 categories and 2 categories on the bottom, and the rabbi is going to concentrate today, hopefully you'll finish the chapter, on the upper 2, on animal and human. Yes?
Just mention that. And we also think, I brought out emotion, but you think.
You're saying intelligence, right?
Intelligence, but he said, you think on that one.
Of course.
Like rocks and soil and things on.
They do. You just don't sense it. How do you know an animal can think? Because they react. If you kick them, they think for a moment and then they kick you back, right? Or they start barking, or they start running away. It must be instinct from their head. But we all know most of it is instinct. But they have intelligence. They know how to hunt. They know where to live. They do have intelligence. But there is a whole different category of intelligence that a human possesses versus animals. In that way, there is a total separation. And you come, God willing, on Wednesday, we're starting a new class, Kabbalah meaning. The first lesson, we're going to build it up, the idea of meaning. We are going to concentrate on that idea and the difference between animal and man. So again, when it comes to emotions, men and animals are equally. Some have more, some have less, it doesn't matter, but the quality is the same. They sense, they express themselves. When it comes to intelligence, there is a separation of category. Human has intelligence to control his instincts. Animals have intelligence to aid them, to guide them, to help them get to where they want to, but not to tell them there is something outside of me. I hope I clarified it. So that's the first introduction. There are many, many 4s, and in our context of the 4 categories of creation, we will compare Kavanah concentration, and action to the upper two of the four. The rabbi next week is going to continue on the same theme, but using the other two. Number two, people think outside the Jewish universe that if I want to be connected to God, I have to become a spiritual human being. The most spiritual, what is meditation all about? Let go, shell off material, shell off all the feelings and all the surrounding, all that you're surrounded by, and become a more spiritual. Concentrate on your mind, on esoteric ideas, become a more spiritual, refined man. And the reason they say that is because God must be a spiritual entity. So the more spiritual I am, the closer I get to God. Judaism tells us, and the Rebbe is going to share it with us in here, that God is not spiritual and not physical. God is not defined in any of those. The fact that I think that someone who is spiritual is a holier person is a very wrong notion. It's not true. You can be a very materialistic, physical, living in day-to-day life and enjoying all the benefits of the universe and be greater, deeper connected to God than a very spiritual man who is fasting all day. Because God is not spiritual. God is not physical. God is where he wants to be. You know where? For a man, it's one way. For a female, it's another. For someone living in Israel, for someone who's Jewish, for a minor, for adult, each one, they connect to God differently. Therefore, why is it important? Kavanah, until now, I'm sure you're thinking that my action is greater if I have kavanah, because kavanah is using my intelligence, which is connected to spirituality. And the answer is totally not true. The reason kavanah is connecting to God is because that's what God wants. God wants me to serve him with my action and my intelligence. Does it mean that my intelligence makes me closer to God? The answer is no, because God is not a spiritual entity or existence. God is beyond spirituality and physical. So there was a yeshiva boy that his father was not well, and he had to be hospitalized. It came Shabbat, and the father had to stay in the hospital. So the boy asked his body to stay with him for Shabbat. He didn't want to be alone. No minyan, no synagogue, no Torah reading. He wanted to have a body there. And the body, the friend, was contemplating, the Rebbe is going to have a Farbrengen. The Rebbe is going to talk on Shabbat, have a Farbrengen. You don't want to miss that. He decided to ask the Rebbe. And he wrote to the Rebbe that his friend is going to be at for Shabbos in a faraway hospital. It's not walking distance. And he's asking him to join, but he feels that he's going to miss out on Shabbat with the Rebbe, Torah study. And the Rebbe's response is, are you looking to benefit your own self or to serve God? If it is about serving God, you have an opportunity to act in kindness. It supersedes everything else. So for him saying no and being in the Farbrengen of the Rebbe and studying Torah, not necessarily makes him closer to God, but being in a hospital with a friend, not reading from the Torah, no minyan, no friends, and obviously he's going to see things a yeshiva boy shouldn't see, a violation of Shabbat's going on right and left. It doesn't mean a hoot, because it's all about looking what God wants and not looking what makes me feel more spiritual and closer to God. And I need you to understand that, because I believe this is the underlying idea of Kavanah, that the Rabbi is good. The Rabbi, what I share with you, you're going to see, you're going to read, and you're going to get, I'm sure you're going to get lost, because I read it 3 times today, and I knew what I want to find there, but it was very lengthy. Everybody will tell you that chapter 38 is not an easy chapter. The underline of the chapter is Kavanah is an added bonus to serving God to a very great way, but not because Kavanah makes you more spiritual person, Not because it connects your spiritual existence to God, who is spiritual. It's not true. God is not spiritual. It is only because that's what God wants. God says, with all of you assets, connect to me. And therefore, you connect to God with action. How do you connect to God? With thought, with intelligence, the power of intelligence, by using Kavanah when you perform the mitzvot. So when I light candles, I say to myself, I'm doing it for God's sake. Now you put your Kavanah into the mitzvah, but not because God is spiritual. It's not true. And you may be able to distance yourself by being a very spiritual, refined man. If someone decides not to be with family and not to please his spouse and be with his children because he's busy studying Torah, they are defeating the whole purpose of serving God, and therefore they're not coming closer to God.
So Rabbi, is it saying I'm doing the best I can valid?
Of course.
Thanks.
That's what you're doing.
So I have for you some stories. First, about you, I shared that story before. Maybe I didn't share it in Tanya class, so I'll share it. There was an Israeli walking in the Israeli consulate in Tel Aviv, in New York, and the yeshiva boy used to be my counselor, my camp counselor, who used to go to visit him every Friday to put him feeling. One time he sees him that he's very serious, he's very unhappy, and after speaking and begging him to share what's on his heart, he says that he has a little daughter, a little child that is 4 years old, and she had a growth, unfortunately, in the brain, a tumor, and the doctors are not giving hope, and he's losing his mind. So the yeshiva boy said to him, why don't you write to the Rebbe? Write to the Rebbe. And he wrote to the Rebbe. This was in 1982. And the Rebbe immediately, I'm sharing you the gist of the story. The Rebbe's response was that they should keep Torah and mitzvot. They should keep Torah and mitzvot. And that would be a vessel to contain God's blessing for a full cure for their daughter. So the yeshiva got it on Friday. He got it on Friday before Shabbat. He gave the note. There was no fax machine then. He gave the note Friday afternoon. An hour later, the secretary chased him and says to him, the Rebbe answered already, Shmirat Torah mitzvot, karaui, something like that. And on Sunday, he traveled to the consulate. Israel is open on Sunday. And he says to him, here is the Rebbe's answer. I have a cure for your daughter. And the Israeli says to him, phrase in Hebrew, tafasta merubeh lo tafasta, which means grab. If you're trying to grab the whole hand, you're not going to grab anything. You know, you want a finger, I understand. What do you mean keep all the mitzvot? This is a secular man. He doesn't light Shabbat candles. He don't put tefillin. They don't keep tarat mishpacha. They don't have mezuzahs on their home. What do you mean keep all the Torah and mitzvot? It's asking me to become a Buddhist overnight. It's impossible. So he says to the man, write back to the Rebbe. Write to the Rebbe that you feel it's way too much. And so he did. And the Rebbe responded, he told the secretary, I think the Rebbe, it's in a note, say to him that in Judaism, doing more than what you can is the opposite of what God expects of you. What it means to keep all the Torah and mitzvot, it means to do today more than you did yesterday, and to do something that you're comfortable with. So the yeshiva boy went back and said to him, what the Rebbe asked is that you always strive to do more, to do better. So today, what is easy for you to do? Let's start with mezuzot, mezuzah. In a week, he says to him, we're going to start putting on tefillin. And so slowly, and actually, I'm giving you the gist of the story. The couple accepted it, and they wrote to the Rebbe that they accept upon themselves full Torah and mitzvot, complete Torah and mitzvot. That's what they wrote. And all they did is one mitzvah at a time. They live today in a town called Tivon, and their daughter, I remember the name, I forgot the name, but I knew the name, grew up today. She's married, she has children, and all the Rebbe's miracle. The doctors all gave up. Why? Because he accepted himself to be a servant of God, to perform all the mitzvot, which means you're doing your best. That's address your comment. But I had another I want to talk about the opposite because we're going to start reading, and I hope you're not going to get lost in the text, but we have to study Tanya. There was a man who read in a book, in a Kabbalistic book, that if you refrain for 90 days from speaking idle talk is talk that is unnecessary. How are you doing? Where are you going? No idle talk for 3 months, for 90 days, he's going to have divine spirit enter them. He will be able to tell the future. He will be able to tell who is a cheater, who is a liar, to do business, not to do business. So he decided to try with his wife's help. For 90 days, he put a muzzle on his face. Today, it's not so far-fetched because we have N95, right? And for 90 days, he did not talk idle talk, only Torah study, only prayer, only eating for Shabbat, eating what's necessary. 90 days went gone and by, and there is no divine presence. He doesn't feel any holier. So he goes to the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov is God's attorney. He has a complaint to God. He tells the Baal Shem Tov, how is it possible? I read in the holy books that for 90 days, if I don't talk idle talk, I'll be a holy man. I'll be as spiritual as you are. And I did it and didn't work. So the Baal Shem Tov turned to him and he says, tell me, do you pray? He said, of course I pray 3 times a day. Why are you laughing? He says, so there is your idle talk. Tell me, when you prayed, did you have different thoughts, doing as every Jew is? He says, of course, I can't concentrate. I'm thinking. He says, that's the idle talk that we're talking about. You think that idle talk is about speech? It's about guarding your mind. It's not something that everybody can do. Ali, you got it? So we are holding on page 540, rather, Ela mipnei shezehu. I am going to read as quick because studying Tanya, we need to read the text. And I'm going to express it. Oh, so here is what this is an introduction to what we're going to study. The rabbi is going to say that in Kavanah, you have 2 levels. You have one that is in the level of the human, and you have one that is the level of animals. Remember I told you the universe is created by 4 different categories? We're talking about the upper 2, animals and humans. What's the difference between animal and humans? An animal has no intelligence to control their actions. And a human can control. Intelligence is the dividing factor between animal and man. Emotions, natural instincts exist by animal and men the same. Kavanah, proper concentration, can be done in 2 ways. One is with full concentration where I'm sitting down and meditating. Why am I praying? It is because I want to connect to God. Because I want to be in love with God. So I have to think and concentrate what God does for me. What did God do for me today? What did I do in return? And that evokes a feeling, a kavanah of praying with intention. Why am I celebrating Shabbat? Because God wanted me to have an island in time to be able to appreciate what life is about, to appreciate my family, to appreciate my health, to appreciate my breathing, to appreciate everything that's around me. That's why Shabbat. Thank you for Shabbat. Now I'm looking forward to Shabbat. When Shabbat enters, I enjoy. Every part of Shabbat's action is filled with great joy. That's the human level of kavanah. Then there's another proper kavanah, says Rebbe, like an animal. It's a natural instinct. In other words, I know what I'm doing. I'm paying attention to it, and I'm doing it for that reason. But there is nothing outside of it. Just like animals have an instinct. They will run to food. They will have children. They will protect themselves. They will make sure that they are in a good environment. But all that is done in a natural way without much thought placed into it because they are born that way. That's the second level of Kavanah, which is a much inferior. And the Rabbi is going to talk about those two levels of Kavanah. By the way, the next chapter, the Rabbi is going to compare us to angels. And angels will fit into one of those four categories versus human. Yes.
Yeah, it's almost like the second category of more like just kind of being in the moment. You know, the instinct is just to be in the
In
moment.
the moment is Kavanah. You have the intention, but it's all natural. That's the key. In other words, not much preparation. That's what in the moment. Isn't in the moment that it came upon you without proper intention? Is that what in the moment? Or in the moment means I'm fully immersed.
Yeah, you're in,
Well, no, for me, I liken it to how you said, you know, the animal, it's more of an instinct, it's in the moment, but it's not taking everything else into consideration.
And
So
not
it's
proper,
really that
not too
deeper
much.
thought.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have two levels of Kavanah. One Kavanah is I have a proper concentration, meditation, and I'm thinking deeply what it is I'm about to do, and therefore my entire body and soul, intelligence and emotions are involved. That's compared to the level of a human. The second type of Kavanah, which in the moment, it's all, we call it the natural instinct. In other words, Shabbat is here. Why do I celebrate Shabbat? Why do I make Kiddush? Because God said so. So I make it. I am paying attention. I'm not thinking about Sunday. I'm thinking about Shabbat. So I have Kavanah, but it's compared to the first one, it's far less. However, it is Kavanah. Again, to remind you that between action and Kavanah, action is much more important, but the Rebbe is going to add that Kavanah is as equal as action. Says the Rebbe, towards the bottom of page 540. Rather, Kavanah is superior to action because this too is God's will. That one attach himself to him by intellect and thought, and by the Kavanah of the active mitzvot, and by one's Kavanah during the recital of Shema and in prayer and other blessings. What the Rabbi is telling us that Kavanah is great, not because I'm becoming more spiritual, it's because that's the way God wants. And therefore, if I use Kavanah, I'm adding light into the building. But it's not because I'm connecting to God in a much greater level than action. And the illumination of the supernal will that radiates and is clothed in this Kavanah is infinitely greater and loftier than the illumination of the supernal will that radiates and is clothed in the performance of the mitzvot themselves, in action and speech without Kavanah. God said, you know how you put light in the building? Having Kavanah. Not because, again, Kavanah is more spiritual and God is spiritual. It's not true. God said, you build up me a house, you build me a palace, but I want you to also make sure there is light in the building. You illuminate the building with Kavanah. This superiority of Kavanah is similar to the superiority of the light of the soul over the body, which is a vessel and garment for the soul. Just as the body of the actual mitzvah is a vessel and garment of its Kavanah. For this reason, then, the performance of a mitzvah is likened to the body and its Kavanah to a soul. The Rabbi wants to give another example. A human being is made out of body and soul. One without the other cannot exist. Human being, action, serving of God, either by action or speech, is a body. The Kavanah is the soul, it makes it come alive. True, although both the actual mitzvah and its Kavanah contains the same supernal will. In other words, God wants Kavanah, God wants action equally the same, which is perfectly simple. That is, changeless and indivisible, God forbid. God is not divided into aspects, so that it cannot be said that Kavanah contains more of God's will and performance contains less. And this will is united with God's essence and being in perfect unity. God is united, it's one. So you cannot say Kavanah is more spiritual, so it connects to a different aspect of God. Action is more physical, so it's connected to a different lower level of godliness. There's no such thing. God is one thing. There is no There is no dividing God into aspects. Nevertheless, the illumination of the supernal will in one's soul is different in terms of its contraction and expansion. What the rabbi is going to say, God said, I want you to do the action, and God said, I want you to have kavanah. When you do kavanah, you bring soul into the body of the mitzvah. In the performance of mitzvah, this illumination is in a state of contraction. One's attachment to God's will is not readily apparent. In the kavanah, however, the illumination is in a state of expansion and revelation of one's soul. Here, clearly, one's thought and intellects are attached to God. What the rabbi is saying, we're going to skip the gray aspect. What the rabbi is saying is, when I use kavanah, I'm bringing a soul to the body of the mitzvah. Why? That's the way God wants it. Nothing is closer to God or bring me to a greater. It's just more of the illumination of the body of the mitzvah. The Alter Rebbe now expands the analogy of body and soul to mitzvah and kavanah. He states that just as in the analogy, all existence is classified into 4 categories, with 2 of them, mineral and vegetables, belonging in turn to the broader category of body beings, and 2, animal and man, to the broader category of soul being. So it is also with regards to mitzvot and kavanah, bottom of page 542. The Alter Rebbe now resumes the thought and intercepted by the above note. Says the Rebbe, they too, the mitzvot and their kavanah, are differentiated into 4 levels. For the body of the mitzvot themselves comprises 2 levels, namely mitzvot consistent of real action, as opposed to speech, which is merely regarded as action, and mitzvot performed with speech and thought, such as Torah study, reciting the Shema, praying, saying the blessings of the meals, and other blessings. Both these levels, A, action, and B, thought and speech, are subdivisions of the category of the body of mitzvot. And the kavanah of mitzvot, that is one's intention to attach oneself to God by performing the mitzvah, this, the kavanah, being like a soul for the body of the mitzvah, is likewise divided into 2 levels, corresponding to the 2 levels of the soul found in material bodies, namely in animals and in man. So says the Rebbe, the action is like the 2 lower levels of creation in animate and vegetables. This kavanah is in the upper 2, animal and human. As we will discover, there are in kavanah 2 types of kavanah, one in the level of human and the other in the level of animals.
So someone says someone down kavanah. What's he saying?
According to Tanya, the way the Rebbe expands, and that's the Rebbe's teaching, the idea of kavanah has 2 main categories. One is just pay attention to the words and say to yourself, what am I saying before me, who I say it? And then there's a far greater kavanah, and that is you think and meditate before the prayer. Why am I praying? What am I thankful for? What do I owe? What did I give back? And with those feelings, now you have kavanah because you're full appreciating of all that God gave you. So there are 2 levels of kavanah in prayer. By the way, I should tell you, when you put on tefillin, do it with kavanah. In fact, tefillin without kavanah is forbidden to put them. You know that, right? In fact, in the biblical time, people wore tefillin all day. Why do we do it only in prayer? Anybody can guess why we do it only in prayer? Because we cannot concentrate on kavanah. And prayer, the hope is that while you pray and you are in synagogue, you would not be thinking or saying things that are profanity or against God, and therefore violate the tefillin. And that brings me to 2 stories, Ali. One is, there is a Chassid who came to Rabbi Hillel of Parich. I thought it was a Rebbe that said it, but I saw it today with Rabbi Hillel Paricher. He was a student, a Chassid of the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe of Tanya, his predecessor, and the one after him. and said to him that when he pray, he cannot concentrate. He reads very fast and he catches himself in the middle of prayer. He's not even sure if he read the previous pages. And the Rebbe asked him, what do you do before prayer? And he says, what do you mean, what do? I do what every chassid do. I sit for 15 minutes. I concentrate on what am I about to do, to be thankful. What should I be thankful about? How should I thank God? And after concentrating for a while, I sit down to pray. So the Rebbe says to him, if so, what do you care to pray to God before you actually pray? What the Rebbe meant to say to, or the Chassid meant to say to him is, actual prayer is bonding with God, connecting to God. You achieve that connection 15 minutes before you actually pray. And then you do the words, you do the motion. So the Kavanah of prayer you did before, and the action you did after, there's nothing wrong with it. Some people can pray before they actually pray. That's number one. Does that help you about Kavanah? There are so many other points I want to make, so just hold it before I forget. This is a famous story, but it has to do with Hebrew text, so I'm going to make it very quick. The Alter Rebbe, the first Rabbi Chaim Rebbe, while he was in prison, one of the times, he was in prison more than once, he had his tefillin. They gave him to this tefillin, and he ordered something from the guards. There were more than one guards, and they refused. So then he put on his tefillin and he started praying, and they all got a shock. They couldn't move. They stood still from great pain. And then the Rebbe took off the tefillin, and they became motions. This is the Rebbe of the Tanya. They continue moving, but now they're still aching and in pain. And they said to Rebbe, whatever you want. And they served him. After the Rebbe was released, the Chassid turned to the Rebbe and he says to the Rebbe, how did you perform the miracle? And the Rebbe says, I don't understand. There's no miracle. It's a text in the Talmud. The Gemara says, וראו כל עמי הארץ כי שם השם נקרא עליך ויראו ממך. It says in the Torah that all the nations of the world will see that God's name is upon you and they will fear you. Says the Gemara, Eilu tefillin shebarosh. These are the tefillin that you place on the head. And as soon as I put the tefillin of the head, they got feared. They feared me and they respected me. So the Chassid said to him, everybody in synagogue put on tefillin on their head and nobody fears him. So the Alter Rebbe says to him, it doesn't say Elu tefillin she'al arosh. It doesn't say tefillin that are placed above the head or on the head. It says shebarosh, inside the head. In other words, if someone is able to put his kavanah in concentration, that the tefillin, the box, is action, but the kavanah, the mindset, is connected and in total correlation, that's when the nation feel when they see the tefillin. The Alter Rebbe was able to achieve that, and therefore they feel them. Everybody else is not that level, therefore does not have any impact. Ali, did you understand what I just shared? And I had another story to share. Yes.
Kavanah is not only used in prayer. You can use it for any other action that you do in life.
Not you could, you
I
should.
mean, that's right. Absolutely.
So is Kavanah, can you say it's emotion? That the emotion has to be there?
Absolutely not. Kavanah is intelligent. The idea is that the mind should participate in the performance of the mitzvah. And that should awaken your heart for love and fear. Of course, the lowest level of Kavanah is love and fear to God, which is naturally in the moment. But that's not the first one. The greater one is when you make the introduction prior and you make sure that you are prepared for the mitzvah. So Hasidim, not Chabad. My grandfather was a Hasid Vishnitz. Every time before they perform mitzvah, they say L'shem yichud kudsha. They say, for God's sake, we are preparing ourselves to eat matzah. And then they would say the blessing. Oh, with God's help, we are preparing ourselves to shake the lulav. And then they would shake the lulav. Chabad Hasidim, we say it once a day in the prayer, in the morning prayer, right at the start, L'shem yichud, before Baruch She'amar, as we start, and hopefully it will go for the rest of the day. But the idea is, I need you to get used to the idea. Action is what counts, no doubt, because it's a world of action. But God wants Kavanah too. Kavanah is putting lights in the building, in the palace. How do you do Kavanah? God created the universe in 4 components. The first 2, the lower 2, inanimate and plants, belong to action. It's all about action. The other 2, animal and human, belong to Kavanah. When I do Kavanah, I have a complete package. Kavanah, in the first place that we're dealing with here now, is when you use your brains to concentrate and prepare and be able to awaken your love and fear to God and be able to perform it completely with all your life. Is that clear now? Okay. The second one will be about emotions only. That's compared to animals.
What did you say?
I said the second level of Kavanah, which is a little, which is inferior, is just the emotions. Put the emotions into place. Instinct. It's called the natural love for God, as we'll see in a moment.
It's on 26 Adar.
It's the Tanya divided into the entire year, leap year or regular year. This is the section of the month that is being studied. So throughout the book, you have that. It's called the daily section. That's it. If you open up Chitas, you'll see this is the section you study. Oh, very nice.
Is the upper 2 and emotions of both.
No. Action is the lower 2. Kavanah is the upper 2. Kavanah is human and animal. We are talking now about the higher level, which is human. My father was a great spiritual man, and he would concentrate. As long as my mother allowed him, he would spend time preparing himself, sometimes on Shabbat. That's the only day he could. 4 or 5 hours before he prayed. When he prayed, he actually prayed very quick. But his prayer would take 5 hours, 4 hours of preparation. And the reason is because it takes, what do handymen say? Measure twice, cut once, right?
Yes.
If you have the preparation properly, then the action goes much faster. And you don't have to fix anything, right? There's no, somebody told me that a good handyman is not that someone who don't make mistakes, but someone that can hide their mistakes. The difference between a good, because I make mistakes, I always say, why do I don't do it as good as handyman? Now I learned that about 4 years ago, my best friend of blessed memory, Mark Niski, told me a good handyman is not they make mistakes just like the handyman, but they are able to hide it that you never know that they make mistakes. But when it comes to Kavanah, actually the Chabad is all about the Kavanah, not because it's greater than action, it's because God wants that part to be dedicated to God. And therefore, sometimes the Kavanah can, not sometimes. You're asking me about Kavanah, that's the point I want to make. My Kavanah depends on my mood, depends on my mindset. If I'm hungry, I cannot concentrate well. That's why Hasidim drink or eat before I do it on purpose. My father made it on purpose to eat. If you look in Code of Law, you will find that it's forbidden to eat or drink before morning prayer. Did anybody know that? It's plain text in Code of Law. Forbidden because you have to go and thank God for your life. It comes before eating or drinking. Hasidim are careful to eat or drink, not eat, drink before davening. And the reason is because if you pray without Kavanah, it's like dead body. You want a soul into the body. You want to be able to concentrate. So if I'm unable to pray, I would take my time before. Not that I have Kavanah, I'm not a great or righteous man, holy man, but there are some basic tenets, and they need to know. In the Chabad community, Kavanah is the introduction and the essence of the serving of God. because then you illuminate the building, otherwise it's dead. So we take more time on Kavanah. And the Kavanah is not just prayer. It's about lighting Shabbat candles. It's about Kiddush. It's about enjoying the Shabbat meal. It's about whatever mitzvah we do. We do it with proper concentration. So there is a debate whether someone can eat before the blowing of shofar. I don't know if you know that debate in the Hasidic community. I do drink a cup of coffee before and eat cake. My father always told me, do it, so that you don't lose your mind and get very hungry or thirsty by the time we blow the shofar. You know what? I do it for the purpose of serving God. So I should be able to concentrate and pay attention to the shofar sound. Some people can fast. I cannot fast. It's hard for me. So when people tell me, I have a cantor, every year I bring in a cantor, and they always say to me, is that okay if I drink coffee before, because it's leading the service? I say to him, in my opinion, I don't want to impose, but I would say it's absolutely necessary so that you're not hungry, so you're able to use your mind. In today's day and age, our bodies need that to be concentrating. Yes, Harry, just
Yes.
Your Rosh Hashanah, not Yom Kippur, God forbid. There is no shofar on Yom Kippur by day. I don't think so. I see people do it and I keep my mouth shut. And I should tell you that my children, did you discuss it with my children? But last week they brought it up. Are they allowed to drink while they are praying? I said, absolutely not. You're standing before a king. There is a code of conduct. If you go to see the Queen of England, is that a queen or she passed away, right?
No, he already passed away. Now it's the king.
If you go before the King of England, you stand there. Are you allowed to get out of your pocket a bottle of drink? Why are you laughing? It's not acceptable. The fact that people do it, they do a lot of things. So I told my kids, and they were kind of, so how come you allow? I say to them, you know full well that there are things that are done here that people are looking at their phone in the middle of davening, which is a disgrace. Am I doing it? Yes, I do it. It's a disgrace too. It's inappropriate. It should come in. What? That what?
She allowed you to suck along all the people.
Okay. Yishar koyach.
How do you then concentrate on Yom Kippur? Praying.
I should tell you the holiness of the day makes me
Without food?
without food. I do concentrate, even though my head is spinning about, there are people here who needs my attention, and there is new people, and there is always fires to put out. I'm able to concentrate. And if you're asking me how, I don't know. Last year, I was Yom Kippur by myself all day with my father's bed in Israel. You would think there is nobody bothers me, no one calls me. I'm not responsible for anything, just sitting next to my father and praying. And I can tell you it wasn't as good. I missed coming back. It gave me a sense of reality about being here in the community. Let's continue reading. I wanted to finish the chapter. The Alter Rebbe now resumes the thought of intercepted by the above note. Day 2, v'nechlekes gamkein. Day 2, the mitzvot and the Kavanah are differentiated into 4 levels. For the body of the mitzvot themselves comprises 2 levels, namely mitzvot consisting of real action, as opposed to speech, which is merely regarded as action. 543, the second paragraph. And mitzvot performed with speech and thought, such as Torah study, reciting Shema, praying, saying the blessing after meals, and other blessings. Both these levels, action and thought and speech, are subdivisions of the category of the body of mitzvot. The Kavanah of mitzvot, that is, one intention to attach oneself to God by performing the mitzvot, the Kavanah being like a soul for the body and the mitzvot, is likewise divided into 2 levels, corresponding to the 2 levels of soul found in material bodies, namely in animals and in man. So again, the lower two levels of the four elements is action. The upper two levels, animal and man, are two levels of Kavanah. The Alter Rebbe now goes, let's see, I don't think I will be able to. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to discuss two levels of Kavanah, the higher one of which is comparable to the soul of man, and the lower to the soul of animals. The first level is that of a person discerning enough to know God and to reflect on his greatness, and to create out of his understanding a lofty fear in his mind and a love for God, in the right part of his heart, the seat of the divine soul's emotions. In other words, use his brains to awaken love and fear of God in their heart. But it starts from the brains, and it has to go there. So that his soul thirsts for God, seeking to cleave to him by fulfilling the Torah and mitzvot, which are the extension and illumination of the Ein Sof light upon one's soul, by which one may cleave to him. When, in other words, this person's desire to cleave to God through the only means of doing so, vis-a-vis the Torah and mitzvot, stems from the love and awe of God, created by intellectual appreciation of his greatness. His kavanah in mitzvot, that is, his desire to cleave to God through mitzvot, thus as an intellectual basis. It's a foundation in intellectual, but awaken the love and fear, and therefore the connection of kavanah to the performance of the mitzvot, or the speech of Shema, study Torah, etc. When he studies Torah and fulfills the mitzvot, it is with the kavanah, and likewise, when he prays and recites blessing, it is with the kavanah of cleaving to God, whose greatness he has come to understand. Such kavanah is analogous to the soul of a human being who possesses intelligence and freedom of choice, and who speaks with wisdom. For such kavanah is likewise based on intellect and choice. The second level, now the Rabbi is going to talk about the second level. The second level of kavanah is that of a person whose understanding is too limited to know and to reflect on the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof, so as to create out of his understanding a revealed love in his heart, and also awe in his mind and dread of God in his heart. His level of understanding is inadequate to create a palpable spiritual emotions. I'm skipping the commentary. The Alter Rebbe words. In other words, the second one, he cannot concentrate, but he's in the moment. Suddenly something awakens, he pays attention to what he's doing. He merely recalls and arouses the natural love hidden in his heart. We have a natural love hidden in our heart, and he awakens it and brings it out of concealment in his heart to a state of consciousness, in his mind at least. Even if he cannot arouse a revealed feeling of love in his heart, surely he can summon it to mental consciousness, so that his will in his mind and in the recesses of his heart should approve and consent with complete willingness and perfect sincerity to surrender. I want to finish, we can finish today, to surrender his life in martyrdom, in actual fact, not merely in a figure of speech, for his affirmation of the unity of God, rejecting belief in any other divinity, in order to attach to him his divine soul and his garments of thought, speech, and action, and to unite them with his unity, which is identical to the supernal will that is clothed in Torah study and performance of the mitzvot, as explained above. In other words, there is a hidden love and awe of God, and he awakens it, so it's a natural conduct. Why do you keep Shabbat? Because God said so. So when I make Kiddush, I pay attention to what I say. Why do I eat matzah? God said it's a bread of poverty. So I eat it because God said so. But there is no love and awe and deep concentration. He is in the moment, exactly. He is fully immersed in what he does for the right thing. So that's kavanah. By the way, without kavanah, meaning he has no idea what he's doing, or he's thinking about something else. That's not no kavanah. This natural love also comprises fear of God, acceptance of his domination so as not to rebel against him, God forbid, to sin. When motivated by this kavana, which is born of his innate love and fear of God, one turns away from evil by refraining from sin and does good by observing the mitzvot and studies, prays and recites the blessings, thinking merely of the meaning of the words without conscience, love, and fear of God in his heart and mind, which would lend emotional intensity to his prayer. Lacking revealed love and fear, he prays only with the meaning of the words when one fulfills the Torah in this manner. In other words, he studied Torah because God said so, so he pay attention. He prays, he pay attention to what he's saying. Adon Olam, Master of the universe, Asher Malach, that is the king over everything. He's just paying attention to it. He has no intention in the intellect. He's just paying attention we call it from the hidden love. I want to finish the chapter. We have very little. This level of Kavanah is analogous to the soul of an animal which possesses neither intelligence nor freedom of choice. It addresses Harry's question. Animals have instinct. They use intelligence for their instinct only, and whose emotions, its fear of harmful things, and its love of pleasant things are merely natural to it, not a product of its intelligence understanding. They don't understand, and therefore they like pizza, or they go to eat a cuisine meal, or they go on a cruise. They don't have such a thing. They live where their natural habitat. They eat what their body needs. They do not overeat. So too, by way of example, are the natural love and fear hidden in the heart of every Jew. They too are not a product of intelligence or choice, for they are our inheritance from our patriarchs and are like a natural instinct in our souls, as mentioned above in chapter 18. And this concludes chapter 38. Again, you have 4 levels because we're going to come to them. Inanimate plants, that's the action of the mitzvah. Animal, human, that's the kavanah of the mitzvah. Human is intelligence, that's where it stems from, and it leads to emotions. Animal type of kavanah is an instinct, innate, hidden love to God, and therefore they are in the moment, they pay attention, and they are concentrating, don't let anything bother them. Next week, the rabbi will go into the 4 universes, comparing them, and the rabbi will bring in different angels. Thank you so much, and good night, everybody. What's the last 2 paragraphs? The 2 levels in performance, the body and mitzvot, of the mitzvot are analogous to the 2 classes of body, creatures, inanimate beings, and plants. They are mitzvot performed with action, and B, mitzvot performed through speech and thought. Speech and thought is plants. Action is inanimate, right? Then, the 2 levels of kavanah, the soul of the mitzvah, corresponds to the 2 classes of soul creatures, animals and men. They are A, kavanah, generated by one's intellectual contemplation of godliness, and B, kavanah arising from one's natural love and fear of God, which is animalistic but exists within us. Good night again, everybody.